Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Dynamics GP user group at Turnkey Technologies today. We're glad you can join us. Today I have with me Spring Walker. She's one of our lovely GP consultants here at Turnkey, and she's going to be going over some kind of new features, year-end closing processes, and much more. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and toss it to her, and we'll get this thing going.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us with our user group this afternoon for GP. My name is Spring Walker, as Luke said, and I am so happy to have you here this afternoon. So I'll be getting started with just a couple of slides and then right to the demo. All right, so we'll be showing just a few of the new features and then getting to the year-end close process, and then we'll get to questions and answers after that. All right, without further ado, let's get into GP. So let me share my screen. All right, great. So a few things that have changed with this new version. Um, we can now email statements right from the GP module using the multi-currency form. So if you have customers that are using GP that have multi-currency, in the past we had to just stick to the blank form and the multi-currency didn't work. So now they have that multi-currency form working for us. Also, email addresses that are based on doc type for customers and vendors will open up with the details showing. And here's one of my favorites, the workflow emails. If you have had trouble with workflow emails based on your inventory, now they will trim off some of those zeros, some of those trailing zeros that you would see. And it pulls this information right from the item card. So if you have an item set up and you have those decimal places set up here as something other than the 5 standard ones, then that will default in to our formatting and make them look appropriate when it gets emailed out to the group. Another thing that's kind of exciting, if you use the navigation lists at all, so maybe on sales, if you're doing something with these navigation lists, you can actually get 2 reports now as well and be able to send out some of that information, even reprinted reports as a mass email. So, if you were trying to send out that information to either to your customer or to other people in your organization, you can grab and be able to send all those out in mass, which is kind of exciting if that's been a pain point for you before. Also over in the bank rec section, if you have had trouble before with checkbook registers and not showing the correct information from your credit card payments, that is now corrected. They will display appropriately now here on your checkbook registers. Before they would have some bad formatting issues and made them not as easily able to be worked with. In your fixed assets section, this isn't something that you'll really notice on the card itself or moving through your normal activities. But when you go to do your depreciation, it now will have a different option for your luxury autos. So if you have something set up and on that book card, it has a luxury auto, then you would be able to take advantage of that new information. So if you're down here with that luxury automobile, it's going to have some different settings now and some different methods for depreciation. And again, that's all part of the process. It's not something you need to set up specifically. It just is part of the update. And that one is actually part of the year-end update. So if you have installed the feature update, but not yet the year-end update, you'll and you need this option, you'll want to do the year-end update. Also, we have some sales document changes. So if you are using the sales inquiries by document, actually, let me start down at the sales order processing level rather than receivables. But if you are looking at something over here and you want to get back to those original documents more quickly, you can click in here and then right from that view screen, when you drill in, you can get to the that other document window. So it's going to be a lot easier for you to be able to get right to that originating document. So, before you'd have to go here and then get into here to be able to get to that number, and then you'd look it up and go find it somewhere else. But now you can drill right to it. Of course, I happened to pick one that didn't have an originating document, but that's how that works. Another fun option was that on the payable side, now those 1099s. So if we're doing purchasing and we're looking at our routines, so our print 1099s, not anything you have to do here, but it's going to mask that ID number for you. So if you just mark the box, there's no additional setup, but it will go ahead and mask that so that you don't have to worry about your vendor's social security numbers or 1099 numbers being compromised. These days we have to be so careful with security. Okay, you can also reprint your EFT payments. So that was a big one for a lot of us who needed to be able to reprint that register and weren't able to prior. And if you are using your historical age trial balance, in the past there were some restrictions, or if you would get errors if you tried to run this and you had a voucher number that had special characters in it. Um, and now it will run without any issues. It does not fail or create any errors when you do that. And since we all use that report to tie out to the general ledger a lot, that was a happy update for me. Oh, this is another one you will love. So on your vendor class, you can now default the option not to roll down. So, if you've ever gone in and pulled up a class and made a change in here to something, maybe it's something simple that you just want to default for next time. In the past, that would automatically uh, default to yes when you want to roll down, and now we can change that to default no. It will remember what you put in last. Okay. Oh, here's another good one. So on your remit to addresses, when you're looking at a payables transaction inquiry, so if I look over here by document and pull up any vendor payment, you can now get to that remit to information right from here. So if you have something different in there with that remit to, you can get right to it without having to go to different screens and search for it. That information is also when you post, when you are paying vendors, and those transactions all move to history. You can um, you can now find it after the fact. So in the past, that remit to information was not stored when things moved to history. And now we are storing that information. There's even a new table. So for those of us who may be a little geeky like me, there is actually a new table. PM80810 will now contain that remit to address detail for us moving forward. So very exciting if that was something that you needed for reporting and just couldn't access before. All right. Let's see. So also, for those of us that use purchase orders, you can now delete lines from the actions menu. Um, or copy and lines as well, but that gives you a little bit more functionality. So if I'm down here, I can create new and copy. I can also um, go to delete those lines. So here you delete those rows, and up here I can copy and create as well as um, remove. Do be careful if you hit delete up there that you'll be deleting the PO. Just want to get rid of those lines. All right. And then a couple for the payroll people that might be on the call. We've got just a couple new things there, but I know that it will make our lives easier. So when we are looking at deductions, just pull one up here. We have a new field to be able to create those maximums by the month as well as the pay period. So we have monthly maximums for benefits. We'll also see this same field available on the benefits and the deductions. So on both sides, we now have a monthly maximum. So you don't have to try to figure that out and get down to those fractions of a penny. To break that down and make that number what you need it to be. All right, so monthly, as well as the pay period, calendar year, and lifetimes that we already had. Okay, we can mask that the same way that we masked that 1099 information on the payables 1099s. We can do the same thing here on our payroll 1099s. So our 1099Rs, when we go to print those guys, we'll have the same options for that partial 1099 mask. Of course, you have to fill in all the information first, and then you can, when you get, you'll have that available when you're ready to actually print them. 1099 forms, then the option becomes available, but it isn't there until you select something other than the validation report. All right. And for those that are sending out the um, that 1095C, the ACA forms, there has been a change to that. The instructions on the back page have been updated, but that is the only change. All the other information is the same. So if you don't need that update on that last page, then um, you won't need the year-end update for the 1095s. But if you do need that, it will be available, but that's part of the year-end update, not part of the feature update that came out in October. All right. So a few things. There also came out a fix for web services. There's a patch out if you do need that, and then of course those two regulatory changes that came out in our year-end update. So fixed assets as well as the ACA form changes. So those are the new features that have been added. Um, if you want more information or would like us to help you get that update installed so you can take advantage of these new features, just let us know. And in the meantime, I will go ahead and walk through what our year-end process looks like. Okay. So in general, of course, before we get into the year-end, what do we always want to do before we do anything in GP major? Back up. Make sure you have a backup. So SQL backups of all your databases, not just your company databases, but your company, I'm sorry, your system database as well, because there will be updates to that. Um, your basic close process is that we usually start with the distributions. So we will, if you do use inventory, sales order processing, purchase orders, we usually start with inventory. Of course, if you are doing your period end processes, then your year end is going to be so much easier. That's really the key to having a successful year end is if you're closing your months every month the way that you should and tying those things out, then year end is just going to be a final uh, a final run through or a final close, and it will solidify things. It will make them permanent and move those things um, to the summary fields, to the beginning balances, to the how many invoices that you've done in the year and things like that. All of that will get reset as part of this year-end close process. So I do feel it's a good thing to do, although there are those that will skip the year-end close in the subledgers. And, if you don't need that summary information, that could be okay. But personally, I think it's great. It's best to always close your year for all the modules. So I start with inventory, as I mentioned. If you are doing your month ends every year, month as you should, you are already potentially doing inventory counts, stock counts. You are tying out that inventory stock status report to what you counted and making those adjustments. If you're doing all of that every month, then at the end of the year, it's not so bad. So close your month as you normally do. Then when we get to year end, what do we want to do? Make sure that we are posting everything. So post everything that you had for the year. Anything included in 2024, go ahead and post that. Um, check the check your master postings. So here in administration, you'd want to make sure there's nothing hung up in batch recovery, right? Make sure that you don't have something that didn't either make it to the general ledger, that may have had something to do with your subledgers, or maybe even something that didn't post in the subledgers. You could have invoices that didn't post that are affecting inventory as well as potentially AR and other processes. And of course, the GL. Everything collects in the GL. So batch recovery is very important. Make sure everything is posted there. If you want to just post everything at once, there is a master posting under routines here in the administration area. And you can also come into this screen and post everything at once. So here you can't print the batch edit lists, but you can access all your batches and post them at once. So if you know that they're all valid and just need to be posted, everything was for last year, you could hit mark all and then just hit post here. If you have the permissions within GP to post all of those, they will post, and then you can check back and make sure there's nothing remaining. Now, of course, if you had anything for the new year that you've already entered, you'd want to make sure that those are labeled properly and don't get posted accidentally. You're only posting activity for the 2024 fiscal year. All right. So again, master posting and series post can be a big time saver. All right. So back to inventory, you could potentially do a stock count. So you would come over here and create a stock count schedule of what items you want to count. And then when you're ready, you would go in and go ahead and start that count. Once, or I'm sorry, enter the differences, enter those counts here. So you start it in the other screen and then you come in here and enter all those values for those items that you counted. Again, if you're doing that every month, then this won't be a surprise or anything that holds you back. And if you don't have inventory or you don't need to do a stock count, then you skip that step. So next, we usually will run reconcile. What reconcile does in the inventory module is it takes all of those transactions that have occurred and then it resets the quantities based on those values. So it's a good thing to do periodically. So once a year, that's a good time to do it. Um, we would post any adjustments from our stock count, again, make a backup, and then we could close the year. So what's the actual process in your inventory module? Simple, year end close. So there are some options here to automatically remove certain things or to update the standard cost. We typically don't check any of these. Most times when I'm working with people on their year-end close, they're not removing the discontinued items or the sold attributes. If that's something you want to do, maybe reach out and we can discuss the implications, what may come of that, and if that's something you really want to do or not. These things, as with a lot of year-end processes, cannot be undone. So if you decide to remove those items, you can't, there's no undo to get them back. Okay. So after you're done with inventory, the next logical one to do would be receivables. Note that there's not really a sales order processing year-end close. So I'll click on sales, and then we have our year-end close here. For receivables, of course, ahead of time, print statements, right? Send out their statements to everyone, tie out your AR aging to the GL, make sure that that all balances. This is the time to do that. You're setting yourself up for success in the new year if you make sure that everything tied out at the end of this year. That is a big time saver moving forward. And something else that's probably a good idea is under the financial series, under routines, there's something called Reconcile to GL. And if you go in there, if you haven't used this before, this is an awesome tool. Basically, you can take payables or receivables, inventory, bank rec, and if you're having trouble tying this to the GL, or it's just month end and it's time to tie it out, then you can grab with the module that you want, fill in the accounts that are related. So in this case, what are my AR accounts? So I would just grab accounts receivable. If you have 15 different AR accounts, put them all in. That is important. And then here I can save my document. You're just mapping where you want it to save. And although it says process here, you're not doing anything in GP. This is safe. You're not creating an entry. You're not changing any values. You're simply creating a spreadsheet that's going to help you tie it out. And this is also something you could even present to auditors. So this is something to have when you hit process. Again, it's just going to create a spreadsheet for me. And then if I want to review the spreadsheet, I can do that. It's going to show me receivables on one side or whatever subledger that you decided to reconcile, along with the GL on the right side. And then you can see if there's anything unmatched, potentially matched. In my case, everything matches. But the big thing here is when you go down to the bottom, you can see what if there was a difference. So in this case, I did have a difference between the GL and my subledger, but I had it coming into this month as well, and it's exactly the same. So whatever my problem is, it was in the prior month or prior periods. So if you don't see your difference, keep running the report. Go back, go back, go back. You'll eventually find where you're off. So that's my tip for reconciling to the GL. Again, make sure that you have this done before you close the year, if possible. All right, so back over to sales and that close year window. So year-end close here, not much to it. If your fiscal year and your calendar year are the same, then you can go ahead and close all. If they are not the same, then be sure to change it so that you're only closing the fiscal or only closing the calendar. And then you'll just hit process. There is a report that's generated. One thing that I always recommend is your year-end reports, send them to a PDF and save those files. You cannot reprint the year-end close files. So inventory doesn't have a report. but AR does. So if you want to see what those ending balances, what summary information you have for those customers, then be sure to print that report. Sometimes they're big, so I wouldn't print it to a printer, but PDFs are a great option for that. All right. This next one is a tax close, and the tax close can actually be done. It applies to both AP and AR. So it can be done uh, either after receivables, or you could wait and do it after payables. It's really up to you. But I'll go ahead and show it now. So under administration, and then if we look under the company, under routines here, we'll see the tax year-end close. And here I can just click on that, and not much to be done here except mark the option to close the year and hit process. Again, I always recommend that you print that report, and you can send it to a PDF. Okay, so the next one I want to talk about, or that's usually in order, is AP. So purchasing, there's not really a year-end close for purchase orders. So if you do have purchase orders that you've been working with, you can reconcile those purchasing documents if you need to, or sometimes people will go ahead and go in and close some of the old ones that might still be open, whatever maintenance that you might do at month end, but nothing needs to be done to close the year in purchasing in AP. I mean, sorry, in purchase orders. In AP, there are a few things we need to do, including being able to send out those 1099s that now have the nice mask on them. So just like before, make sure that we are closing, that we're posting everything. So if you have posted anything that still has to do with this year, make sure that it made it all the way through. Check for those hung up batches somewhere. You want to make sure that your age trial balance report matches, or that you've run that reconcile report, and that you tie out. Sometimes people will print a period end analysis report or other reports to have available. Once you get everything posted, usually the next thing is you're going to print 1099s. So you can come in, choose what year you're printing them for, uh, whether they're miscellaneous or non-employee compensation, dividend, interest. You just choose the right one that you need, and then you can choose down here to go ahead and use that mask or not, and then choose to print the 1099 form itself. And when you're done, you can do that 1096 form, which is the one, the company one. And of course, you want to print the forms. We'll print the actual forms themselves. The print button gives you an edit list, so you can check and make sure everything is correct before you print out those forms. The forms will print with the boxes on them, so you don't have to worry about going and getting those pre-printed forms and trying to do the alignments and all that. All that's in the past. They will print within the correct boxes, and all those boxes will just print right on your blank paper. So don't worry, you can print as many copies as you need and reprint as needed. But again, make sure you do the edit list and verify everything is correct. If you find that there are things that are not correct, you can go and make changes where needed. Okay, so there's a 1099 details under the cards here, and this allows you to pick a vendor and then see what they have for each one. And then even if you have to, these are editable. So I don't recommend this. Ideally, you want to have them marked as a 1099 and have it collect the information from the transactions as you go through the year. But things happen. And if you do need to get in here and make a change, this is a screen that allows you to make changes specifically to the 1099 report that will print. So you could update these values and hit save. And then when I print this vendor's 1099, it'll show those updated values. Quick note, make sure you're choosing the right document type here. Right now I'm looking at non-employee compensation, but it could be that they had a miscellaneous or a dividend or something that needed to be changed. So make sure you've got the right type up there before you make changes. Once you have made all those changes, if needed, then you'd go back and print those 1099s again. Then your year-end close itself. On the AP side, not much to it. Looks a lot like the AR did. You just have the option to choose to close the fiscal and calendar year at the same time, or you can pick and choose. Just make sure you're making the right choice when you are closing. And again, what that actually is changing is if we pull up a vendor and then we are able to look at their summary information, then that is going to show up, how many invoices have they done this year and all of that. So, and that it gets reset. All right. So, number of invoices, amount you've used this year, all of that sort of thing gets changed whenever we change. And you can see all of that here as well. When I look at the vendor ID on the summary, we can see amount since last close, but we can also see the fiscal or the calendar year. So the close does reset certain fields, and then the fiscal and calendar will show all of those things based on those dates, not necessarily when you closed. But if you want these things to be more accurate in all views, then you try to do the close before you do new transactions for the year. But it's date sensitive, so it's really up to you as to when you can fit that in. Now that I just said that that one is date sensitive, so payables are date sensitive, receivables are date sensitive, the general ledger is date sensitive. The one that's really not as date sensitive is fixed assets. So if we look at financial, fixed assets would be the next thing you typically close, but fixed assets is separate than everything else. So this can be done later or a different timing. It doesn't have to be done right in line or necessarily before you close GL or other things. Fixed assets is kind of its own little animal. So, you would come in and perform that maintenance, do any additions that you needed to for the year, retire any assets you might need to, run depreciation and projections if you need to for the new year, retirements, that sort of thing. When you're done, of course, you can run reports and such, and you'll have to do the GL posting. And that GL posting, of course, is what creates your general ledger entries, your journal entries. If you don't do this, then you'll be way out of balance without doing manual entries. So be sure you do that as well. I'm just going to collapse the financial for a minute so we can see the year end down here. So the other option for closing our year end, these are based on the books. So you have multiple books, or you can have multiple books in fixed assets, and only one is going to be the book that interfaces with the general ledger. So you can close all of them, but this is the one that that you usually are trying to tie to the general ledger. The others can be for information. So you can insert all, or sometimes you'll close these at different times. You don't necessarily have to do them all at the same time, but as I mentioned, fixed assets is not as date sensitive as the other modules are. So if you have new assets for the new year, you want to close the current year before you add those new assets. So best practice, always do things in order as much as you can in fixed assets because it is not as date sensitive. So anyway, you can insert all, or you can insert just the one, and then you'll hit continue when you're ready. So that is the fixed assets close. You will get a report at the end of that one. And then the final close. This is the most exciting one. I say that only because you have to have the general ledger closed in order to get your new reports for the year, right? So you have this is sort of a one that people get excited about. They are looking for it. You know, at some point they've gone and looked at a financial summary here, and they don't have any beginning balances for their accounts. So people get antsy in the new year if you haven't closed the general ledger yet. Our management reporter can only do so much to generate those financial statements when you don't have beginning balances yet. So the general ledger doesn't have to be closed right on 12/31 or whenever your fiscal year ends, but it is helpful if it is. So when we are ready for the general ledger, of course, make sure everything is posted again. Post, post, post. I've been talking about that a lot, but that is really important. Most of the time when somebody has some sort of issue, it's because they had a batch stuck out there that everybody forgot about. So if there is something that you see hanging at that master post, this is another time to try to get those pushed through. And, you know, this closing may be a week later after you've done some of the others. You may not be running through all of these right at the same time. But if you are, then this is the next logical step. Okay, so that year-end closing for the GL, make sure everything is posted, make sure you've done all your normal month-end processes, and then when you're ready, you do the year-end close. This is going to transfer those balances to the new year and also close out to retained earnings for those P&L accounts. So before you do this, if you have not recently looked at your um, accounts and your account listing, I always take a step back, just pause for a moment, and go find your smart list and create a quick exception list for your financial accounts that shows the year-end issues. So sometimes when people are creating an account, they might not notice this posting type over here. And we often see P&L accounts that are accidentally created as a balance sheet account. Now, of course, the problem with that is during year end, if it's set up as a balance sheet instead of P&L, it's not going to close out to retained earnings the way that we want it to. So I do a quick check at year end usually, and I'll do a search and just, you know, come in here and say that the posting type is equal to balance sheet and the account number, or the main account number rather. I would come in here, look for all columns and find that main account segment. And if it is greater than 3,999 and it's a balance sheet, that's usually going to be a problem. Oh, it's not tying out. Okay, no problem. It's something that it wasn't set up here. So I would have to use the actual account number, which is fine. So I would say the account number, and then I would say is greater than. I'd have to come over here and say, there we go. Put the full account string. Mm. And I do have, look at this, project losses. That's obviously P&L, but see, it's set up as a balance sheet. So I would need to go in and all these guys go fix it, right? So if that wasn't where I wanted it to be, I would go change that and hit save. And then I'd use this as an exception and keep going through. So again, I'd fix that one. When I refresh, that 6,900 one should fall off. Yep, see, it's gone. And then I could keep going. But it's very important to do this. These unit accounts don't matter. Those are unit accounts, non-financial accounts, in case you're keeping track of square footage or employee count or anything like that. But just something to be aware of. So fix your accounts first, and then finally you can come down and do your year-end close for the GL. And this can sometimes take a few minutes if you've got a lot of activity in there for the year. So, don't be afraid. Let it keep going. And eventually you'll get that report pop up, and that's when you know you're done. Again, we don't usually advise that you are marking to remove. I do usually maintain the inactive unless you know that you want to get rid of them. I usually go ahead and just keep all, not necessarily just the ones that had budget amounts. And then you can hit close year. It'll go through and close the year for you. And this one does have an undo. So if you accidentally closed the year before you were quite ready, or for some reason you forgot some activity that needed to be included, you could come back in the same screen and hit the reverse historical year, and it would take that year and close out and reopen that year for you. So hopefully you don't need to use that, but it is there just in case. So again, back up, back up, back up. Make sure you have that SQL backup before you start. Make sure you posted everything, and then your year-end close should be a success. And if you print all those handy reports to PDFs, if someone needs them later, you'll be able to access them with no problem. So that concludes my year-end portion of the webinar. So Luke, if you want to switch to the next slide and help with Q&A.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, we're going to open the floor up now for some Q&A time. If you wouldn't mind, if you do have a question, utilize that Q&A button at the top of the Teams meeting, and feel free, and then we'll answer as we go here.
Yeah, sounds good.
And this will be posted to our website as well for your records and reference as well.
Thank you, Luke. And thank you, everyone, for taking their time this morning to join us, or this afternoon.
Yes, definitely. And if there's no questions right now, guys, we will. I have our contact here. So yeah, just wanted to thank you guys for joining us today. If you do have any questions you think about, or even want to schedule any sort of meeting to go over, especially any of these year-end processes, you can reach us on our website. Our contact us page is listed right there. And yeah, if there's no questions from anybody, that will do it for us. And we appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks again, everyone.